Okay, apologies for absence. Karen, anything?
I haven't had no apologies, Chair. Looks like everybody's here.
Good.
Could I just start by mentioning that for all members and obviously members of the public who will be viewing this after the meeting, that we are recording this meeting and we will be uploading the meeting then to the website for anyone to view it. During the meeting, just a few little housekeeping issues. If you would like to speak, obviously you're on camera, so if you would like to speak, raise your hand. Or if you're not on camera, you can either come in, verbally, or if you also want to raise the hand function on the screen. If during the meeting you have any technical difficulties, you need to contact us. Please do. If you can contact us via email, you can contact me and I'll be opening my emails, or by telephone or on my telephone number that I've given you, just in case you have any. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Karen.
Good. Right. So item 2 are the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of January. I've read them through. They seem a true record to me. Does anybody have any comment? There's a lot of shaking of heads, so they can be passed as being a true record of that meeting. Item 3, to receive declarations of interest. I think it's easier if I go through them here. Mrs. Tinsley? Are you there?
No.
Thank you. Mrs. Hallett?
No, nothing.
Mr. Watkins?
No.
Mr. Alexander?
None.
Councillor Cuddy?
No.
Councillor Gray?
None from me.
Councillor Griffiths?
None from me, thank you.
Councillor Robertson?
No declarations.
And none from me either, so that's fine. Then we've got application for dispensation. The first one, I think the only one today, is from Councillor Burnett. And Debbie, do you want to elaborate on that for us, please?
I think it's a very comprehensive application. Just running through it, it's a dispensation application to speak, vote and remain, and it links into charges being set or matters relating to the council's telecare service. As is mentioned in the application, Councillor Burnett has a lasting power of attorney for her mother who uses the facility. I know for setting the fees and charges for the telecare service for next financial year, that's already taken place. That was prior to the 10th of March council meeting, and indeed Councillor Burnett declared her personal prejudicial interest and left the meeting, but it's looking ahead. I haven't got any concerns with the application. The relevant paragraphs are referred to on page 2 and 3, being grounds D, E and F. So unless there are any questions, nothing further from me.
I got no problems with it, and I'd be happy to approve it. Is anybody against that? Would anybody? Shaking heads of the people I can see. Mrs. Tinsley, I can't see you, but can you? Are you in favour of this application? I think you're on mute, so...
that's why. There we are then. Yes, I'm in favour.
Thank you.
I'm happy.
Who else can't I see? Thank you,
Cuddy.
Councillor Gray? Councillor Gray, are you on mute? Councillor Griffiths?
No objections from me.
Councillor Robertson?
No objections from me.
Councillor Gray, you there? Can you just confirm?
He did say earlier, Chair, that he's having trouble today with his internet, so we may have lost him.
Oh,
There's a message from Councillor Gray on the chat saying no objections.
very good. Was that Councillor Griffiths? Excellent. Okay, well,
Councillor Gray.
yes, so that will be accepted. Debbie, you happy with that? On the
Yes,
ground?
thank you. Thank you.
Good. Okay. We now go on to the report following observations at the Town and Community Council committee meetings. I gather quite a few of us have been attending these meetings. Karen, can I ask you to tell us who's been where, and they can give a report then, please.
I've got quite a few of you actually who have reported to us over the last couple of months. I just wondered if you want to start alphabetical order. Shall we start with Mr. Alexander?
Yep.
Thank you. Happy so to do. I attended, I hope everyone can hear me clearly. I attended a meeting of Cloncarvan Community Council on the 18th of the 2nd. This was a meeting that was conducted through the mechanism of Zoom, and I was the only external member present, apart from the Vale of Glamorgan councillor. I thought it was a purposeful and well-directed meeting. It was a very friendly meeting where everyone was properly respectful of each other and had followed due process. The agenda was achieved within the necessary time constraints, and I thought overall I found the structure and coherence of the meeting and the way that it was conducted to be very impressive. I think I'll pause unless anyone would like to ask me to expand on any of that.
I'll take silence as being no, that's fine. Thank you very much. Who's
Thank
next,
you.
Karen?
Mrs. Hallett. Mrs. Hallett, you're on mute, sorry.
Still on mute. Mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah, thanks.
Thank you. I visited St. Bride's Major in February. It was a really pleasant meeting. It was a pleasure to be there. I was cordially welcomed by the clerk and by the chair and introduced to the panel members. The agenda and papers were accessible online, which was a pleasure. I was informed that it was being recorded. People were cordial and kind and understanding to everyone, and there was a great sense of humour there. The only one comment I would make is that it was a lengthy meeting. It went on for 2 hours. It may be something they wish to consider, but all in all, it was very good.
Very good.
That's fine, Chair.
Thank you very much.
And yourself, Chair?
Myself, yes.
Yep. Lantwit.
I attended the Lantwit meeting. That was very good. That was very well run, very well chaired. They had a very, very long agenda, which I was surprised he got through in an hour and a half. But that community council seems to do a lot of work in the background, for example, planning, for example, other things. So they didn't go through it all again. It was very well run, very well chaired. Like you, Mr. Alexander, all the councillors seemed to get on. It was a very sensible meeting. It was, I think it was like a well-run company, effectively, a board meeting in a company. I didn't have any criticism at all. I thought it was very good. And I think it's quite interesting. We were sent originally to some of the councils or community councils where perhaps there had been difficulties, and you see those, and now you begin to other councils, and we're beginning to see how perhaps the majority of them work properly. At least that's my experience. So unless anybody have any questions, we'll move on to the next one.
Mrs. Tinsley. Thank you.
Ah, save the best till last. So, thank you, Richard. That was a perfect introduction to what was not a pleasant experience, I have to say. So, if you recall, I was attending.
Sorry, can you remind us where you went? I
can't remind myself where I've been now. Where have I been, Karen? St. Athan. It was following on from the discussion related to dispensation that we had in relation to a library, community library conversation. It was a big agenda. The chair, I felt the chair was harassed throughout the meeting, and the more challenged she was, the more nervous she became. The issues they were discussing were very close to some people's hearts. They were very passionate about some issues, and as a consequence it was really difficult to not get embroiled in what they should be doing. I'm automatically a problem solver, so I almost wanted to step in and resolve it for them. Quite clearly there was a major issue in terms of what had been agreed at a previous meeting, which I wasn't privy to. So there had been an agreement that the business plan for the ongoing library funding would be presented, and then further funding could be drawn down on the basis of that business plan being satisfactory. And that business plan had been, as far as people who submitted the business plan were concerned, had been submitted, and as far as other people around the table were concerned, was inadequate. And I have to say, quite frankly, it clearly was inadequate. There's no question about that. It was in the form of a letter. There was no risk assessment. There was no KPIs. There was nothing in there to suggest an ongoing plan. There were some aspirational statements. And that's where you can feel that I got into the nitty gritty of the meeting at that point. I wanted to say to them that that's not a business plan. And that was repeated several times. But if I put all that to one side, the actual running of the meeting became very messy. And it was almost as if they didn't really know what the rules were for who should withdraw at what point, and as discussions were being made, who shouldn't be in the room, who should be in the room. And because the chair was then becoming quite anxious, one of the councillors then became very pedantic. And he was right in what he was saying, but I felt some sympathy for the chair in that she was losing a grip on the meeting at that point. And so this councillor clearly knew what he was about, but it was coming across quite in a an overly assertive manner. It concluded eventually with the proposal being amended, and again that was a big mess because they weren't clear how it should be conducted throughout the meeting, but it was amended, and it was a good result in that they're now going to resubmit the business plan, and if it is satisfactory, then they will be able to draw down the funding. So I think the topic was very difficult. It was a really interesting one to observe, given the discussion we'd had in relation to dispensation previously. A lot of personal issues came out about a previous councillor who was originally running all the library, who had moved on, who was a trustee. So there's a lot of quite personal and insulting information passed back and forth about that particular person. But then it was concluded that actually he'd done a really good job, but he was a bit of a control freak, basically, and he liked to have everything his own way. And of course he'd gone and things weren't as they expected. So generally speaking, I'd like to revisit it to see if it runs differently with perhaps not quite such a thorny topic. But yeah, that was the meeting.
Thank you for that. Are there any comments or issues on that? No? Well, that's a very interesting report. Some hands are up.
Debbie.
Debbie.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Just so that everybody's aware, I've been able to resurrect the monitoring officer meetings with clerks that I established a couple of years ago. They've sort of fallen a little bit by the wayside because of the difficult working arrangements that we're in at the moment, and some of the difficulties that some of the clerks have experienced. But we have got a meeting in the schedule for the 19th of May. So this will give an opportunity. Obviously, the feedback will go to the clerks well in advance of that and following today's meeting, but it will give that opportunity to also to have some follow-up discussion at that point in a sort of a more general setting, and then also enable other clerks to learn from the experience of others. So hopefully that'll add value to the work that's been undertaken by members.
Thank you. Councillor Gray, I think you were the next. No, sorry, Councillor Cuddy, I think you were next to put your...
Okay, yeah, I'll just make a general observation because of my role in One Voice Wales recently, which is chair of it, and relating that to the fuss in Cheshire, if you recall,
Yes.
Farnsworth Council. It's so usual that there are, umpteen councils perform very well, and just one or two become the butt of most social media and bad press coverage, really. To such an extent, I think I got a letter in the Guardian about this, saying we're doing it better in Wales or something like that. And I got contacted by some English councils which were, having bad times, bullying and all those sort of things. The issue raised there, and it sort of links to what Debbie said and to other items on the agenda, was the position of the Ombudsman in England. Of course, they don't have Ombudsman, it just goes to the monitoring officers. In Wales, there is seemingly a better position where disputes can be resolved in a more orderly fashion. So hopefully, it's so normal, there are so many of these councils, 730 in Wales, thousands in England, that you're bound to get some of these issues occurring, and inevitably press coverage will maximise the issues, maximise them as the normal.
Thank you. Councillor Gray?
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yes. Yep.
Brilliant. I might have missed it, Ms. Tinsley. Were you introduced? Did they know you were? Did they know you were present? It's obviously interesting to understand that from the context of how generally people act. But yeah, otherwise, not surprising. But as Councillor Cuddy says, it's not the norm.
Not at all. And I would say that I was introduced, and the meeting started off very well. It was always going to be a difficult meeting because of the topic, and that's why I'd like to revisit, because I think it would be unfair to judge them on the basis of that one meeting. We knew it was going to be difficult. We knew the library was a thorny topic. I would just like to follow that up and to perhaps give them the opportunity to show what they really can do.
I put my hand up again, Chair, just to sort of say I wondered, Debbie, when you meet with the clerks, whether actually a generic training around handling sensitive subjects, because clearly when emotions run high, people go to different places, don't they? The more officious or knowledgeable go to their rules book. Other people go to a crouching, hiding position under a table, maybe, and somewhere in between is everybody else trying to get through the issues. And I think that every council at times has emotive topics, and maybe there's additional training there. I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, shall I just come in there, Chair? Certainly the meetings that I have, and obviously we've got the 19th of May, we do draw out key learning points. So that is something which does factor into those sessions. I'm also conscious, obviously, I think all of our town and community councils subscribe to One Voice Wales, and I'm always very, very conscious that obviously we've got finite resources in the Vale Council, and about the sort of the limits to my role, albeit I do always shall we say offer more assistance and provide a steer. But I think the point that Councillor Cuddy made about One Voice Wales, and the structure that we have is certainly something to be envied, I think, because it is more structured, but there is also that support for One Voice Wales, and I think it's important that that is tapped into as a learning opportunity.
Thank you very much. As a matter of interest, as well as being introduced at the meeting I attended, immediately it was over, I was sort of put on the spot and asked, how did it go? Excuse me, this phone was ringing. How did we do was the expression. So I don't know if the other independent members found that, and I just gave a fairly mundane reply. Anyway, Mr. Watkins, have you been to council?
Yes, I attended a meeting of the St Nicholas with Bondleston Council in February. This obviously was a remote meeting. I'm not technically minded. I had no difficulty in joining the meeting. The agenda was on their website. It was very clear. There were comprehensive notes. The meeting started promptly. There was a good working relationship between the members. They were very respectful to each other. The chairman kept the meeting going, and it was very harmonious. I did pick up a few points, and these may be red herrings because this was the first time I'd ever attended a meeting of a community council. But the meeting started promptly, but the clerk wasn't present. There were 15 items, 20 items on the agenda. The clerk arrived during the discussion of item 15. This struck me as odd with my background, and I really just questioned, should the meeting have commenced in the absence of the clerk? Who's responsible for keeping the minutes? If there is an issue arising, say a financial issue or a quorum issue, who is to advise? Those were the points that occurred to me. As I say, they may be red herrings. The other thing that struck me as perhaps unusual was there was a long discussion at the meeting about the budget, the precept, and the need for a place plan. There was a long discussion, as I say, and the members then decided that the public should be consulted, that there should be a public meeting in view of the possible rise in the council tax. But they also made mention of the fact that there were very few members at the meeting. And I just wondered if the agenda contained or referred to the issues that were being raised, what was it right then to defer a decision, perhaps influenced by the fact that not many members were present? Those are the only points that occurred to me. As I say, they may be red herrings.
Mr. Watkins, in the absence of a clerk, was somebody appointed to make a note in his or her absence, to take a note?
Not formally,
right,
as I recall.
Okay. Councillor Robertson, your hand is up. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Watkins. I missed which community council that was.
St Nicholas with Bondleston.
Oh, right, okay. Was any explanation given as to why the clerk wasn't present? Were they having IT problems, or?
No, I think they knew that the clerk was going to be delayed, as I recall.
And they still carried on with the meeting?
The meeting, yes, the meeting was scheduled for 7:30. It started at 7:31. It started promptly.
And the clerk didn't arrive until
well into the agenda.
Okay, that sounds extraordinary to me. There we go.
Thank you. Debbie, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, yes, I'm equally surprised as well, but that'll be an interesting one to have a discussion with the clerk. I think it is a new clerk, from my recollection. I mean, certainly town and community councils, they do find themselves from time to time when a clerk has resigned and there's a gap between appointing another one, and we do see in a number of community councils that a councillor will fill that role, and indeed it is covered off in, I think, in the good councillor guidance that, you know, that is permitted, albeit it should only be on a temporary basis, so that those circumstances do arise. But I've never been aware of a situation quite like the one that you've described. And of course, you know, the chair, there would have been the opportunity for the chair to adjourn the meeting. You know, that there are always opportunities, and I think that's probably what Councillor Robinson was alluding to, because you can adjourn a meeting even if it's just for half an hour, and in fact you can advise members in advance. But yes, that'll be a really interesting one to have a word with the clerk. You know, you touched upon the point about you know, whether, you know, issues such as quorum and dealing with those issues. So again, you know, that'll be an issue, you know, that I'll gladly take up with the clerk. And I think in those circumstances, you know, you would expect the chair to be well versed in the standing orders of the community council. So obviously, you know, I'm grateful for the feedback, and I think quite a few questions arising from that, which I'll gladly take up.
Thank you. Before we move on from there, it seems to me that these observations are good and could have a very good effect. Councillor Cuddy, have you had any sort of feedback from the local councils as to whether they think it's a good idea or not?
No, they haven't communicated with One Voice Wales or I. I imagine that we could do it in the community liaison committee. We put it on the agenda. Good idea. Because I agree with you. This relatively comprehensive picture of how councils work seems to me, you know, it's as you'd expect, really.
Yes.
And it's quite good to hear, actually. And I think you can spot where the issues will arise. The St. Athan and the Bombleston. And if you know the personalities or whatever of the issue, you can sort of guess. And I think you went to one where initially, wasn't it, where there was a common land claim?
Yes.
Is that so? That's so unusual. That there's bound to be a bit of a problem, you see. And that's so yeah. As expected, I think.
Yes. Okay. I appreciate there's a couple of hands up at the moment, and I'm going to come round you. Mrs. Hallett, do you want to comment?
Yes, well, I actually observed at Dinas Powys, which Councillor Robertson is a member, have taken feedback on how they received me or what they thought of me as actually attending the meeting.
Yes, a good idea.
He is actually, Councillor Robertson is with us, isn't he?
Councillor Robertson, yes, and he's got his hand up as well.
Okay.
Actually, Chair, that's why I put my hand up.
All right.
What I'd like to say is that the feeling within the Dinas, and it's a mixed political group in the Dinas Powys Community Council, we all appreciated very much Mrs. Hallett's added a certain frisson to the meeting, as we were all on. I won't say we were all on best behaviour, because it's a community council where we all get on very well anyway, in spite of our political differences. But I think we all appreciated that Mrs. Hallett's visit was a very important part of the process that I think we're all glad to be monitored, as it were. It sounds odd, I know, but in actual fact, I think it's good to sort of have the feeling that there is an authority above looking down on you and checking what you're up to. But we really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to the next occasion.
Thank you. Karen, I'll come on to you, but perhaps it is a comment that the way we have seen these community councils work, they know we're there. One wonders how they would act if they didn't know we were there. Karen, do you want to comment?
Only to say, Chair, that the fact that you are attending, we do have the majority of the ones you do attend do contact me pretty soon after you've been there to ask, what the observations were. So I can say they are interested in getting the feedback. And the ones I've spoken to where there have been issues, the chairman in particular, have taken on board those concerns, and we'll be raising and addressing them. So, and when you go back, then we can always check. Once you've been back, we can compare the original report and then have those conversations again where necessary. But I just wanted to let you know that they are fully aware that you are attending. They are aware that you're observers, but they're not actually, and they are contacting me soon after to ask how it went.
Good. Okay. Mr. Alexander, do you want to comment?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I have another experience to relate, if you would like me to, which is at Penarth Town Council.
Oh, right. Yes. Sorry, yes.
Which I attended on the 11th of the 3rd, and of course, Councillor Cuddy was also present at that in his official capacity. From my perspective, again, this was a purposeful and well-run meeting. I was not welcome to the meeting, but no particular issues with that. Debbie has just explained at the beginning of our meeting that it's now the practice for officers to turn off their cameras during a Microsoft Teams meeting, but I wasn't aware of that when this meeting began, so it wasn't always clear to me who were the officers who were in attendance and if there were any members of the public present. There were certainly members of the press present, I think, and they were asked, as I was asked, to withdraw for the discussion at part 2, which obviously I was very happy to do, but it was not made quite clear to me, well, it wasn't made clear at all, as to how and when I should rejoin the meeting. And so I left it for 10 minutes and then emailed the clerk and asked, is it all right to rejoin the meeting? And was told yes. But I thought, and this may be entirely my fault because I didn't clarify that in advance, I thought it would be clear, it would be good to be clear about the mechanism and the way of actually rejoining the meeting when the discussion of part 2 items is concluded. So that's just a further observation that I wish to offer in order to be helpful. If members of the public had attended for the first time, and of course, if they'd attended a physical meeting, the people who were members and the people who were officers, that might have been rather clearer to them. But with some cameras switched off and some switched on, I think that's an inevitable complication of remote meetings. And again, I'll pause there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Debbie, your hand is up. Before you start, Karen and Mrs. Hallett, your hands are up. Do you still want to comment?
No, sorry, no,
I'm really sorry, Chair, but mine is not going down. I'm really sorry about this.
Okay.
So it's just not coming down at the moment, well, but I'll keep trying. Thank you.
Right. Debbie, your hand is up.
Yes, I'll be very brief, and it's just in response to a couple of interesting points that that Mr. Alexander raised, and I think again we can share with clerks some of our house style that we adopt in the Vale Council, and that might assist our colleagues in the town and community councils. But certainly, it's the Vale of Glamorgan Council sort of in-house style, that officers you know, don't go on camera, so that you know, the members can be seen on screen. So that is our house style, but we'll certainly share that, and it might be something that town and community councils would like to adopt, but it would be a matter for them. And just to mention, ordinarily the way that we organise our agendas, you'll be familiar with, we have the part 2 agenda items right at the end, so we move it, and that's for the convenience of those attending. So we conclude all of the part 1 matters which are in the public domain, then move into part 2, and then the meeting ordinarily would close. So that's quite interesting, just to hear about how they organised their agenda, but also the need, I think, you know, needs to be flagged up with the clerk and the chairman about there being clear procedures, and obviously informing you know, members of the, you know, such as yourself, the media, and other members of the public that have been allowed to attend the meeting when they can actually rejoin. So yeah, some really good points there for us to pick up.
Good. I think that probably brings this item to a close. Safe to say that we will be going on with it, I assume, Karen.
Yeah.
I find it useful to be given a few options of where I should attend. What do the other independent members think? Or would they, Mrs. Hallett, what do you feel?
I totally agree, Richard. I think we have agreed to do, Karen, is it 3 or 4 hearings in a year?
3 in a year, yeah, it was agreed, yeah. But we did do a few more because of issues that were raised, you know, throughout the year, yeah.
But we'll start again now from April with 3?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so if we could know which you'd like to have, like Richard suggests, would be a really good idea.
Yep, yeah, definitely.
I think, well, there are, what are there? There are 5 of us, 3, so that's 15 over the year. So, you know, it's 1.5 a month sort of thing, or 1 1/4. You can perhaps plan that, Karen, and go through in alphabetical order and ask if one of us can go to these such and such a meeting. Is that all right?
That's perfectly fine, Chair. There are obviously a few community councils that members haven't been to, so I would like to make sure that as men, you know, you've done all of them to be fair to everyone. But if there are, you know, issues in some, then obviously I'll flag those up as well. So yes, no problem. Get that programme out to you shortly.
With regard to the Vale, I think hopefully we have all been to enough of their meetings to see how it works. Fortunately, at the moment, we don't have to go there and see how meetings are badly run. So I don't think there's any need at the moment for any of us to go back to look at Vale meetings. Do anybody disagree with that, of the independent members? No? Fine. Councillor Robertson. Sorry, Councillor Robertson, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, somebody actually touched on the Community Liaison Committee, which is a Vale committee which has guest representatives from all the community councils are invited, and town councils. Yeah, I was wondering if there should be a stronger link between the Standards Committee and the work that you independents are doing, and that liaison committee. Like there should be a report presented at each liaison meeting, which actually describes the work you've done and maybe puts forward some of the comments and some of the ideas that you people are coming up with. I think that might be a way of actually getting a smoother approach to actually progressing improvements within community councils and town councils. Just a thought.
Thank you. Before you comment, Mr. Alexander, I think your hand is up. You've gone off screen, but yeah.
Sorry, Chairman, that's a historical hand and I've taken it down.
Fine. Debbie, do you want to comment on Councillor Robertson's suggestion?
Yeah, certainly it's a good idea. It's not something I've really given thought to. If you wouldn't mind, I'd quite like to just mull over that one. I mean,
Right.
certainly I offer for the clerks, the meetings, the monitoring officer, we feed back the information. Some of the information can be a little bit sensitive. Now, obviously I appreciate, you'd expect as officers that we would be mindful of those sensitivities. I'm also thinking that we will be, under the guise of the Local Government and Election Wales Act, we will be producing annual reports shortly. But I think that there is some potential there. But if I could give that some consideration and maybe bring a paper back for the next meeting.
Thank you. That sounds a good idea. Right, I think we can move on from 5 to item 6, which is the Standards Committee Forward Work Programme for the next 12 months. I think Debbie and her team have put this together. This isn't written in stone in any way. Anybody can, if there are other items that we want to discuss, we can. But Debbie, do you want to enlarge on that?
Yes, I mean, as you'll see, there's quite a lot of our business as usual, as you'd expect, and also, we'll be having the annual meeting for the Vale of Glamorgan Council on the 10th of May. So our next meeting will be into the new municipal year. So, of course, we'll be also having the standard item of appointing the chair and the vice chair for this meeting at the 27th of May Standards Committee meeting. So just to draw out some of the not so usual routine matters which I've incorporated, and of course we'll also add in the report that we just touched upon concerning Standards Committee reports to Community Liaison Committee, so that'll come to the 27th of May one. I've mentioned for the 27th of May meeting an update report of the clerks meeting with myself, as that's scheduled for the 19th of May. So I'll have an update report for you at that stage. Hoping next year that we should have a standards conference, even if it's a remote standards conference. So just got a marker for the 15th of July to update you there. As I've also touched upon earlier in the meeting and at our last meeting, of course, there are some changes coming through which impact upon the Standards Committee under the Local Government and Elections Wales Act. So obviously keeping an eye on those timelines and any regs that arise, but particularly the timelines. We're getting more certainty coming through with regards to the commencement orders and the timing of that. So we'll be having an update report for the 15th of July. A non-routine matter for the 9th of September is the update regarding the Senedd order relating to electoral arrangements for the Vale of Glamorgan Council. I'm anticipating the order will be in place by the 9th of September or soon thereafter, because it'll take effect for the local elections in May 2022. But yes, it's just so that everybody is apprised of the final order. And the last one I wanted to just give a mention to is for the 27th of January, bringing a report so that members have the opportunity to discuss the induction training programme being proposed for the members that are elected following the local government election in May 2022. So we've got a few additions obviously there to our routine reports, but as the chairman's mentioned, this is an opportunity if members would like to see anything else on the agenda, it would be good to consider those at this point, or indeed we can do that in a future meeting. But it's just nice that we have a programme that we can work to as officers.
Thank you very much for that. I'll give you an opportunity of raising a hand electronically or manually if there's anybody who wants to comment. No, as there isn't, we'll thank you for that, Debbie. On the left-hand side, there are dates put in. Are those confirmed, or
Yes.
what are they?
The dates for the meetings, yes,
Yeah.
they are confirmed, Chair.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
So we can make a note of those in our diaries. Let's hope they won't. Not too many of them will be remote. I should imagine May might well be, but we may be able to meet after that. Good, thank you very much. The Adjudication Panel for Wales Annual Report. Hopefully you will have read that. Does anybody want to comment? I don't think there's a great deal in it. Again, if you want to put a hand up manually, oh yes, Mrs. Hallett, you've put your hand up. Would you like to comment? You're on mute at the moment.
I'm sure it clicks onto mute on its own.
Oh, right.
Excuse me, Chair. No, Mrs. Hallett, I'm actually doing it because what I'm finding is there's a lot of feedback, and I don't know whose feedback is coming from. So the ones who are not speaking, I'm muting. So I'm doing that for a lot of you at the moment if there is feedback. So apologies, but it just makes it better for the meeting. Thank you.
Good idea. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Richard, it's probably two questions for Debbie, please, just for clarification on things. I was just reading the appointments in the report, and there's a cross-ticketing. I think I know what that means, but could you just tell me what it actually means?
Thank you. Well, I'm really delighted to hear that she thought that I would necessarily know what it meant, but I had to think about that myself because it's not a term that I would normally use. But my understanding is that they've appointed from other tribunals a member onto this adjudication panel for Wales. So I think it's somebody who's already got experience in another tribunal. That's my understanding.
I think that's right, because as a lawyer and when I sit as a judge, you're ticketed to do certain work. So you would be given a ticket, for example, to do family law or not. So they would give you now a ticket to for the lay members to sit on this on the adjudication panel. I think that's what it means. Yes.
And the second one, Debbie, I think, is Judgecraft. I mean, looking at training needs, I'm not quite sure. Well, I definitely don't know what that means, what sort of training that would involve, and whether if it is looking at the way in which hearings are handled, is it something that would be of use to the independent members of the Standards Committee? First of all, I need to know what Judgecraft means.
Well, perhaps I'll have a go at that, but Mr. Watkins will help. If you've read a recent obituary in the Times, and if you haven't, I recommend you get it, which was Judge Harman who died, and he was regarded, he was termed as Horrible Harman, and he was the worst judge out. And when he had Paul Gascoigne in front of him, he said, "Who is Gaza?" You know, he'd never heard of him. And Judgecraft is well, hopefully an ability to put people at their ease so that they understand what's going on, that the process, it's getting away from the old formalities of a person coming to court and cowering because they don't have no idea what's going on, to trying to explain to them in layman's language of what is happening, so that at the end of the hearing they go out having understood the process, having realized and understood the result and know what they have to do next. Mr. Watkins, is that fair? You've been a judge probably as long as, if not longer than me. Would you accept that?
It's to do with keeping yourself out of the papers, isn't it?
Yes, that's probably right.
Yeah.
Well, on that basis, then, I don't think it's applicable for the Standards independent members to become involved in that training.
Well, it does help. Debbie, do you want to comment?
Yes, all I was going to say, I think, obviously we've got experienced judges, retired, semi-retired judges, and I think, you know, there's that opportunity, isn't it, to observe. I would say it's probably what we'd refer to as shadowing, isn't it? And just observing, I think, that the style that's adopted, because I think, you know, from what I've seen, the approach which is adopted, and possibly even independent members who don't have that professional background, I've observed the way they've dealt with hearings, and they do display a good judge craftsmanship, and so yeah, I think you know, there's certainly good practice adopted within the council, the way the independent members deal with matters, but there's always that opportunity to observe, you know, Richard and Gerwin when they are performing that role as chairman. So I think we're quite fortunate in that respect, aren't we?
I couldn't possibly comment. That's good. That's good judgecraft. Okay. Anything else on that? On the Adjudicational Panel for Wales annual report? Sorry. Yes, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the observation that the adjudication panel doesn't seem to have considered a huge number of cases. And that actually, in my submission, is a very good thing, because it means that there are generally the standards of performance and behaviour are good, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Right. We'll move on to the Ombudsman's report of 8, and perhaps we can link this with 9. Debbie, do you want to speak to this? Because
Shall I just very briefly? I mean, the documents are before you. Agenda item 8. There's been a refresh of the guidance, which I frequently refer to and refer members to, and whenever we have new members, I share a copy of the guidance with them. And you know, it certainly, I think, assisted members and assisted me in the past about interpreting the members' code of conduct, and from time to time the Ombudsman refreshes, and this is a refresh. I think the last time was 2016, so they've refreshed it. They've put more information in about the 2-stage test that the Ombudsman applies, and also just drawn on experiences, cases, court cases, and obviously matters before the Standards Committee and the Adjudication Panel for Wales. So I think it's a very useful refresh. I'll certainly, once it is finalised, be intending to share it with all Vale councillors and clerks to town and community councils, and that might be something we pick up as a second recommendation. I know it's in paragraph 2.6 at the moment, but I think that would be a useful second recommendation. But I'd certainly support the changes. I think it reads better, and the examples which are given, I think they are really very, very helpful just to inform the text.
Good, thank you. And then linking it up with the annual report, is there anything that you want to comment on that?
We've highlighted and drawn out the key pages, as we've seen, because of course it's a much bigger report, because you'll be aware of the dual function for the Ombudsman. So I haven't got any further points that I wanted to particularly raise. It's just so that the members were cited on the report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cuddy, your hand is up. You may be muted.
I know I am.
Thank you.
Hello, can I speak now? Yeah, I've just got a general comment, and I thought the tone of his introduction, the Ombudsman, the draft consultation, was a bit edgy, basically, and you know, complaining rather than, and not displaying ombudsman's craft, you can put it that way. In a sense, you know, so it slightly annoyed me in that sense. We know quite clearly that you know, there are lots of you know, dubious objections or matters put to him, but I feel, you know, he should be a bit more sort of you know, willing to sort of debate the issue. I've met him in relation to One Voice Wales issues on bullying, and what he did stress there was the need for evidence. And I felt, you know, that could have been brought out in this document, the need for evidence. He claimed that he wasn't tetchy and trying to dismiss town and community councils, and that otherwise, you know, health had taken over and it's far more important. But he said, no, that's not the case. And mostly it's the lack of evidence, and perhaps that should be spelled out in a bit more clarity in this consultation. The other, I think, issue which not I think Debbie's not brought out is suggests that standards committee hearings should be in public. Now, I thought that was the case anyway, but perhaps Debbie can clarify that. I mean, I think there are objections to that, in a sense, because of the personal nature of some of these things.
Yeah, should I just step in there? Yeah, that is the standard position. They should be in public, unless decided for particular reasons that they should be in private.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, Councillor Robertson, beg your pardon.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, people always get my name wrong, don't worry about it. The thing that intrigued me slightly, or confused me slightly, is page 30 on the report. And it says this year we closed 235 code of conduct complaints, blah, 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 blah. And then it goes on to say, however, we are glad that we still closed more complaints this year than we received. How does that work? I don't quite understand how you can close more complaints than you receive.
I read that as meaning that they had completed some from the year before.
Yeah, so they were straddling over from the last financial year. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
So
thank you.
It's yeah. Right. Okay. Mrs. Hallett, yes. You're on mute, Mrs. Hallett. Sorry.
Sorry, Richard.
Under
the KPIs on Appendix 2, I had great difficulty reading the green parts. In fact, I had to go over them in pen. It was a bit of a pain. But the question is, under the HR indicators, it would be useful to know just how many staff they have. They show a low percentage of sickness and absence, but how many staff do they employ? It does help.
Well, I'm afraid I haven't got any idea. Debbie, do you know how many staff there are?
Sorry, Richard, I'm not raising it as a question. I'm just saying it would be useful if it was included in the paper. Just an observation.
Yeah, thanks.
No, I don't know how many, but you know, I do speak with senior officers in the Ombudsman's office quite frequently, so I will just raise it in conversation, you know, when I speak next.
Because if you look at 100% of appraisal, I mean, that is excellent, that is brilliant. But if you've got 4 staff, you'd expect to have 100%. Whereas if you've got 200 members of staff, that would be exceptional. So it just adds a bit of information to the KPI. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Mr. Watkins, yes. I think you're still mute.
Okay.
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Performance indicator 6. What are compliance visits?
Pass.
Shall I just come in there? I must admit, we haven't been subject to a compliance visit, and so I've never had the pleasure of that being explained. But I would imagine it must be them going in and observing. But yes, I certainly haven't had the misfortune of one of those.
But what are they visiting? Are they visiting all local authorities?
No, I think it must be. I mean, I certainly can get some clarification for you on that, but I think it must be, visiting an authority where there's been an issue or a concern. But certainly, I'll get some clarification on that.
I see. I only raised it because if 6 seems a low figure to me, if we're talking about all the local authorities in Wales.
Perhaps they may have some concern before they enter. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, Councillor Keddy, your hand is still up. Is there something you want to say?
There is indeed. One of the recommendations is that we submit comments or not. Are we going to submit any as a result of our little conversation here? I mean, I did feel his introduction was very touching and unbecoming of an ombudsman.
I think it's difficult to comment on that as to style, really. But
style,
I'm sorry.
Well, that would cover judgecraft style.
Well, I suppose it would. But, what, Debbie? Do you think we ought to comment?
Can I just check? Is it his comments in his preface? Is it his foreword as opposed to the body of his the document as such?
Yeah, it is just the foreword, really.
Yeah.
All the rest is very useful. Yeah.
Yeah, because of course the foreword is a bit it's his personal point. It's a matter for the committee.
Sorry, but where do we find that? And the
you
papers
don't see it. I've got the copy of the document. You see.
Well, then it puts us at a bit of a disadvantage.
It puts you at a disadvantage.
It was attached as a link. Yes. I have a copy before me because I printed it out. Did you want to particularly highlight the areas of concern that you had, Councillor Cuddy?
Well, I could. I could give you separately the page numbers and things, if you like, but there are just comments in there. I can't see them. I am concerned that the promote. He says this sort of thing.
Oh, I've got the paragraph. I'm concerned that the promotion of equality and respect.
That's one of them.
And the disclosure and registration
and little. Yeah, he just described it. Little scenarios of people arguing with each other, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
As though he's annoyed about it.
Should I just read those little snippets?
Yes.
So you say, I'm concerned that the promotion of equality and respect and the disclosure and registration of interests continue to dominate the complaints received by myself. I've seen year-on-year increases in the number of complaints where bullying by members is being alleged, particularly from community council clerks, other officers and contractors of local authorities or community and town councils. This suggests members generally could benefit from training or refresher training on these aspects of the code in particular. So that's one paragraph. And then he also starts another paragraph with, I continue to be concerned about the number of low-level complaints that are being received. I welcome the fact that the number of these low-level complaints has reduced. However, the number I receive is still too high. Whilst these complaints appear to have been generated by a small number of members, in these challenging times, it is increasingly important to ensure the effective use of my office's resources and that any investigation undertaken is proportionate and required in the wider public interest. I suppose the issue there is that could be sort of I suppose targeted at a small minority, couldn't it?
If I can interrupt, on the last page of his forward or whatever it might be, he says, I take a very dim view of complaints of this nature and have, where appropriate, advised members making a complaint which is frivolous, vexatious or malicious is in itself a breach of the code. Things like that. That's another paragraph. The whole style is touchy.
I can see where you're coming from, but I'm not sure it's touchy. I think he's obviously fed up with frivolous complaints, and he's trying to get people to concentrate on the issues before they refer them to him. Whether that's tetchy or trying to teach
well,
what to do, I don't know. But there are a few hands up. Councillor Robertson.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest possibly what we have here is a change of attitudes, which is happening, which I've noticed very much over the last, well, during my life actually. Attitudes have changed a lot, and what is now regarded as bullying, people seem to be more sensitive to issues which they come up against when they're dealing with other people in a social or a business way. And I'm wondering whether what the ombudsman is saying here is that he hasn't noticed that there's things which used to be acceptable are no longer acceptable. And I think we've seen this in a massive way over the last 30, 40 years. And it's a change of attitudes which I don't know. Maybe he's saying that people are being oversensitive. I don't know.
Mr. Alexander?
Thank you. Can I just say I strongly agree with what Councillor Robertson has just been saying. I mean, from my perspective, he is the Ombudsman and he's entitled to give a view. And if that is what his experience is, based on Nolan principles and public service values, then then he's entitled to give that view. And I suppose the danger in giving any degree of personal view is that you generate antibodies. But I don't think that detracts from the relevance of him offering those particular observations. Thank you.
Tinsley?
Thank you. Two things. Firstly, I completely agree with what's just been said. However, I'm uncomfortable that we're being asked to comment on a document that we don't have in front of us, that we haven't had access to. We have the report, and as I understand it, this is something that's come along with the report if you've received it electronically, which we haven't done. So I don't see how we as a committee can comment on something that hasn't come to us. However, because we have all commented, I agree with the comments. I think he's entitled to his view. That's his view.
Well, I think that's got to be right. Mr. Cuddy, do you want us to take this further and for us to consider it? I mean, would it be too late if, for example, we consider it our next meeting, Debbie?
To make the comment, I didn't appreciate that an electronic link hadn't been sent through to members, because of course there are a number of electronic links to the agenda. I don't know whether Karen could comment on that.
Chair, yeah, my understanding is all members will have received the link to the meeting as well, and in the agenda meeting link. Sorry, there's a lot of feedback because there's too many people's microphones on. Sorry, but yeah, the link to the report, the link to that report is in the link that you would have been sent electronically. What we didn't do was copy a hard copy because the amount of the amount of pages, and but it was actually in the link that you were sent with the agenda when it was sent out, electronically.
Well, I have to confess I haven't read it. Mr. Cuddy, do you want Councillor Cuddy, do you want us to take this further, look into it further? You're probably on mute. Councillor Cuddy, we can't hear you. Well, I can't.
Right, you can now.
Yes.
Hopefully. No, I don't want to push this too far, but I do feel that we could put it positively as a comment. That he refers, evidence is the issue for him. I think he should spell out in a bit more detail what evidence consists of and how it may be addressed somehow. That would be the positive way, without saying he's a bit bad-tempered and justified in his annoyances. I feel a positive approach would be, okay, what sort of evidence do you require in order for someone to make a reasonable complaint?
Okay, but I take it from the first part of what you said that we won't take it any further at this stage.
Yeah, I'm happy. The reason I do have it, of course, is that our town council had the whole document copied to them, so I'm in an advantage. Okay,
thank you. Right. Debbie, your hand up is up.
Yes. Just to clarify, I mean, obviously, there are a lot of very long documents for this agenda. The guidance alone for county councillors is a 64-page document. Of course, there's one there for the community councillors. There's also the annual report, which was a very lengthy report for the Public Services Ombudsman for Wales. We've just pulled out extracts. I suppose, our normal approach would be to provide links, but because I am conscious of I suppose it's it's that climate change agenda, isn't it, and paper. But it would be useful for myself and Karen to be given a steer whether, because it's obviously caused some concern, whether members for this committee don't favour having a link, but it would mean a considerable amount of papers on occasions.
Okay. It's probably not good, Judge Craft, to say that we're only being paid for half a day, so we're not going to read the whole thing. Right, we'll move on to correspondence with the Public Services Ombudsman for Wales. Any correspondence, Debbie?
Yes, I have had correspondence, but given the nature of the correspondence, if we move into part 2, I'll run through the highlights of that correspondence.
Thank you. Is there anything which has come up which I have to consider whether it's urgent or not? I haven't been told of anything. Karen?
Nope, there's no urgent items, Chair.
Good. So on that basis, are we happy to move to part 2?
Chair, just to let you know, I will stop recording and I'll let you know once the recording is stopped so we can go into part 2.